ambiguity that you talked about. You mentioned in your memoir about some very critical words for cultural relativism.
Well, the question is whether there are universal values. I mean, I think that's the question, you know, and whether there are such things as universal rights, whether there are things which are absolutely right and absolutely wrong, you know. And at the time that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was drawn up, people believed that. You know, that's what that declaration is. It says that that we have certain rights. What's happened in our time in the last 20, 25 years is an attack on that idea, the idea of the universality of rights, usually from parts of the world where they want people not to have many rights at all. And the idea that the idea of human rights is a Western idea, and that different cultures have different priorities, and freedom is not one of them, if you like, you know. And so that if you look at, you can't judge, the argument is, the way in which things happen in, let's say, the Islamic world or China, because their cultural parameters are different, you know. That's the slippery slope, seems to me, because I think if you look at these societies, when their citizens are given any kind of a chance, you know, such as the Green Movement in Iran, such as the sadly unsuccessful movements of the Arab Spring, or China, all these people say the same thing. You know, they all want the freedoms that they are deprived of. So that's what I've been talking about. We have to really hang on to this idea of universal human rights, you know, because to abandon that is a dangerous thing.
I remember back during the apartheid era in South Africa, Nadine Gordimer wrote a piece, I think it was for the New York Review of Books, where she was saying that there were some writers who saw this distinction between right or fight. But then by an act of the government, their writing became fighting. You know, that the politics was kind of imposed on it. Now that happened to you as well, in a sense. You've said that the Satanic Verses was in fact the least political of your three books at the time, but yet, but yet
maybe I was wrong.
Well, obviously some people thought you were. So, you know, who gets to decide when something is political and when the artist has to engage that?
Well, unfortunately, as you say, it's often imposed on the work. You know, I mean, there's the great famous line of Milan Kundera from the Book of Laughter and Forgetting, where he says the struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. And that often happens to artists, where simply the act of remembering, you know, saying, this is how it was, runs up against official truth, people who don't wish it to be known that that's how it was. And so the artist, simply by expressing an act of memory, you know, finds himself politicized because there are other versions of the truth that wish to impose themselves. I mean, I found that from, you know, long before the Satanic Verses. You know, when I was writing Midnight's Children, there's one of the passages in that book deals with atrocities committed by the Pakistan Army during the 1971 war for the independence of Bangladesh, where there were a series of what we would clearly now understand to be genocidal acts that were carried out in Dhaka, in the capital of Bangladesh. And this was very well attested at the time. You know, there was photographic evidence, there was eyewitness evidence, there was every kind of evidence. And yet the official truth of Pakistan was that that never happened. And that anybody who said so was simply anti-Pakistani. You know? And so again, there, just simply the act of saying, here's how it was, became politicized because the official truth was at odds with that.
So there's been a lot of focus ever since, whether it's in China or the Arab Spring, about the role of the internet and social media in terms of its role in, you know, freedom or demonstrations. But is there an equal possibility for the enemies of freedom to use it as effectively?
As a propaganda tool? Well, I'm not sure that it's equal. I mean, I think it's there as a possibility. Yes. I mean, I think we have to see the internet as being morally neutral. You know, the internet is a tool. You know, you can use an axe to cut down a tree or to, you know, cut someone's head off. I think it's on the whole beneficial. I mean, I think there's no question that it makes it much harder for ideas to be suppressed. I mean, I was quoting this morning in a meeting we had about this rather unusually eloquent remark made by an Iranian Ayatollah a few years ago, which was, he was the man given the task of censoring the internet in Iran. And he kept trying to, close down websites, and then like 20 more would spring up over there. And eventually he said, it's like removing a ladder to stop birds from sitting on the roof. Which I thought was a kind of unusually precise.
He's very poetic,
exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's true about the internet, that you can find it if you want it. It's out there somewhere. And I think even in China now, where there's really, there's 50,000 people given the task of censoring the internet.
I know, it's mind-boggling.
It's astonishing. You can't get Facebook in China. Twitter is very difficult to get access to. Their own social network is very heavily monitored and censored. But yet, the people in China seem to be finding more and more ways of getting around that. Even the so-called Great Firewall, that China has built, people get around it. Because, for instance, one of the methods by which the firewall is activated is if you use certain kinds of names. If you use the names of well-known dissidents or whatever, immediately that triggers, the thing which bans that particular communication. So what people use is things like deliberate misspelling.
Right, exactly.
So that the algorithm doesn't work. And people do manage to get through. And so I think on the whole, it's beneficial.
Right. I want to connect something that you talk about, again, in your memoir, in terms of who controls the story.
Yeah.
China, China has been critical of Japan for not being truthful about the history of the war, and yet they are too, from the kindergarten, as he was saying, people there are denied their own history. And you talk about, in your book, about, we have these grand narratives of nation, of religion, of family, and who controls
I think that's what the whole argument is about. This whole subject of liberty, the whole subject of free expression, it boils down to that. Who has the right to tell the story? And in a free society, or one of the definitions, if you like, of a free society, is that we all have the right. We can tell the story of our family, of our national history, of our culture, of our faith, in any way we choose. We can tell it reverentially or satirically. We can tell it well or badly, and we're not punished for doing either of those things. We all tell ourselves the stories of ourselves, and there's an argument about the story, in any society, including this one. I mean, we see how divided a society this is. There's a very serious argument about the nature of America that's going on in America. But the ability to have the argument is something which you could call freedom.
Right.
And the moment you get to societies like China, in which authoritarian regimes wish to impose themselves, the first thing they do is to shut down the ability to dispute the narrative. And that's why they're so unusually interested in artists and writers, because those are the people who dispute the narrative. And writers and artists have no armies, they've got no weapons, but they have this, they have the ability to challenge the official narrative. And that's where the conflict often arises.